Welcome to GovCast. I'm Ross John Fortune. Recently, at Sea Airspace 2025, I talked to Brian Campo, Deputy CIO and Chief Data and AI Officer for the United States Coast Guard. We talked about the challenges and strategies involved in leveraging data in AI and how his dual roles make that possible. You'll also hear how the Coast Guard fosters adoption and innovation with training, sandboxes, hackathons, and other initiatives. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Deputy CIO and Chief Data and AI Officer are some pretty lofty titles. So I want to talk about data and AI. How do you get that synergy in to further Coast Guard mission?
Yeah, so it is a lot. There is a nice sort of coalescence of the two. By being the Deputy CIO, I have a little bit more control over what gets implemented, how we prioritize things. So it is an interesting combination of titles, but I do find it to be an interesting opportunity. Obviously, the work on the CIO side is 100%, and then you've got another 100% with Chief Data and AI Officer. But I will say, I enjoy both sides of it. I think data and AI is a little bit more exciting right now. There's a lot of change and a lot of new opportunity. The biggest thing that we're really trying to do is just lay some groundwork, trying to talk through a lot of how we're going to get, first off, our data right, doing some small AI projects, and then really just focusing on operationalizing it. So that's where having the CIO side of it tied in very closely has been really good for us.
Coast Guard does a lot of things. There's a lot of data governance to be had. How do you make sure the stuff is clean so you don't have a poisoning problem or any kind of data problem where you have bad data and you can't work with it?
Yeah, that is the $1 million, $10 million, $100 million question for sure. We have a few things. We build out, I talked about sort of doing some foundational work. We've taken the time to really build out a good governance strategy. We have been at it for about 2 years. I've been in the role for just about a year now, but the first year was really just kind of exploring data, trying to figure out where our data was, what was the quality of our data, setting like a baseline. This last year, since I took over, we really spent a lot of time building out governance and processes. One of those was setting out our mission domains, so our data domains. We've got 12 of them, evaluating each one of those against a set of standards that we build out. And then now we're at the point where we've laid out some data team strategies. So we have sort of a consistent data team approach. We understand sort of what we're expecting from data teams. We've built out some engagement patterns with them, taking a little bit of, again, an IT approach, thinking of them like Scrum teams. So we've got a few people doing different things. We've got product owners. We've got Scrum masters laying that out. The data teams themselves have stewards in them. Those data stewards then own both the quality, evaluating the quality of the data, but then one of the things that we've had really found really challenging is the idea of how do we integrate that and create enterprise data, bringing the domains together. So we are still in the early stages. We've had a lot of success in a couple of domains, but I do think it's probably going to be a long journey for us to think about how do we get the data to the point where we know what we're going to do with it, how that's going to integrate into AI. We can talk a little bit about, where is the data being brought in? How are we thinking about that? But right now it's really been just putting the right governance around it helps us to understand what we want to get.
So to that end, what are some of the successes you talked about in different domains? What do those look like, number one, and how do you keep building off that as everything evolves so quickly, because something that may be working one week might not work the next because models have changed, things have changed, or circumstances have changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Change in data is always the constant. So really our biggest success so far has been around the people and HR side, so the People 360 side of things. Our first data team, we fielded that about a year and a half ago, focused on HR data and again, People 360, what we call our talent attribution framework. That was a huge endeavor. We really jumped in on the deep end, but we had to. A lot of people don't understand. Coast Guard was in a recruiting crisis about 2 years ago, not recruiting enough to maintain stable workforce. And so that was really the genesis of this and really jumping into the deep end with the HR data. The data team was able to do some amazing things fairly quickly. We stood up sort of an integration office, looking at requirements changes, looking at the data to support that, and then building out the processes to make sure that that data, as we found data, as we understood the requirements, we would build products. And so we really built it in a linear fashion. We didn't start with, how do we build a huge HRIT system? How do I build a huge monolithic data process or application? We didn't try to build out, a new vendor solution. We really looked at, what are the products that we need? How do we find the data we need to build that product? And then how do we turn that into something that could go tangibly in front of some recruiting offices, helping them understand, and then helping us do more projecting of the workforce. So very incremental delivery.
To the workforce side of things, you're talking about all this need for these AI, and obviously somebody's got to operate the AI, somebody's got to work with it. How are you upskilling everybody to that point? Because you, not just an OCIO, but throughout the Coast Guard, people need to be able to use it.
Yeah, data literacy and AI literacy, those are number one factors for us. We've built out a couple of training programs already. We've worked with DHS, Department of Homeland Security, to build out some AI courses, just sort of level setting baseline capabilities. We are working with the Coast Guard Academy. One of the amazing things for us is Coast Guard Academy is really trying to drive a digital native. We've got some really smart folks on the staff over there. And so we are building out 3 sides of a curriculum. One's going to be operational research. One's going to be data and analytics, and then the other's going to be AI. And so figuring out, how do we bring those 3 together into something that looks like a cohesive format, so that as we bring folks through the academy, they're coming out with a baseline set of skills. And then the other side of it is, if you're familiar with, sort of data approaches and AI approaches, it really is just getting people to use them. Once you get over the hump of just giving them a playground, giving them the opportunity to be exposed to the tools, it's a natural progression for folks to get used to them. Once they see the value that they bring to them, folks really will start to figure it out. Most folks, some folks won't, and that's okay. We've got some other engagement methodologies for them, but most folks really, they want to know it's okay to use tools. They want to know that AI is going to be somewhat trustworthy, as long as you can show the responsible side of AI and you give them a playground to play with, opportunities to integrate that playground work then into their jobs. We're finding really good adoption so far.
Do you do sandbox type things? You talk about those different ways of doing things. What is that feedback that you're receiving, both in the sandbox and outside of it?
Yeah, it's been really, really encouraging. We're doing sandboxes, we're doing hackathons, we're doing what we call, it's had a couple of names. It started as Coasty Coder, it went to Deck Plate Developer, getting the right tools in the hands of anybody that wants to use them, putting communities of interest around them, and then giving them the opportunity to deliver a small solution that we then can evaluate and understand. We have had, we've had our second hackathon. We've given out a total of, I think, 11 awards. Awards in that case are applications that we find enough value that we want to bring them from a small single unit capability into something that we're going to look at maybe scaling across the enterprise. A few of them have been HR. Some of them have been as disparate as just a different way to understand how to do some of the paperwork that we're doing, different ways to understand some of the contracting and procurement that we have to do. So lots of different really disparate use cases. And again, it really is just giving people sandboxes, opportunities to use it, giving them the freedom and telling them that it is okay. As long as you understand how to use it responsibly, go and try it out and then figure out how we can scale it later.
Coast Guard's in sort of a weird position because being a sea service, military service, is also being under DHS. What kind of lessons are you learning from the other CIOs and the sea services, for example, and also from the DHS components?
One of the things you didn't mention was Coast Guard also has a very limited budget, right? So we're not as big as Navy. We're not as big as DHS. We are one of the bigger components in DHS, but we don't have the budget to build everything ourselves. And so we have really learned a lot from what Air Force did with Nipper GPT, with what Army did with Campo GPT. DHS has their DHS chat. So we have one called Ask Hamilton. That is our sort of chatbot interface. less about the chatbot because there's other solutions to use. Ours is really about how do we give a knowledge service to people. So we leverage other folks' chatbots. We're also leveraging some of the work that they've done on, retrieval augmented generation, RAG, some of the learning methodologies that they're building out, some of the processes that they're doing. And so what we're doing is we're sort of in that fast follower mindset of finding the really great things that people have done, figure out how to integrate them in. Where we need to build, we'll build. But our first mindset really is to look for the opportunity to leverage what others are doing. And that has been great for us so far. It trains us to really move quick and think differently.
I know there's a lot of talk about agentic AI and things like that. You mentioned the chatbots and things like that. Is that something that is being scaled at Coast Guard? And what is it being used for internally? Obviously, there's plenty of things I'm sure you can't tell anybody, but what can you tell us about that?
That is, I am super passionate about anything automation related. So that could be RPA, so robotic process automation. We've done that for about 2.5, 3 years now since I got to Coast Guard. We are taking that model, which was amazing, the highest return on investment of any investment that we've made in the Coast Guard. Numbers just don't lie that anytime you can put automation in the hands of folks, you're going to get a return on it. So we're taking our playbook that we built for robotic process automation, and we're now expanding that into agentic AI, as you mentioned. My hope is, and my goal, right? Again, I love the moonshot concept. My moonshot concept is an agent on every desktop by 2027. There's a lot of work to get there. Not necessarily something that I think will be easy to achieve, but we have had such good response from any type of automation that I love to see us doing it. We've got some of the foundation in place. We are building out some basic agents right now, and then figuring out how do we integrate those into some of the processes. Really going to be interesting. I am extremely excited about where that can go and what it can do for the workforce.
I wasn't going to mention budgeting, but you did bring it up, so I feel I should. How do you stretch those dollars? How, in a world of efficiency and things we talked about off mic, how does AI fit into that, and how do you build these things while trying to save money?
Yes. So again, I mentioned RPA was the highest ROI of any project we had. When you can show the numbers, you can find investment. We started RPA. The first 2 years was not on budget. So we started out of Hyde. We started as sort of a pilot project. It was almost because we were in a sense of extremis. We had moved to a new financial system, and the processes were very manual. The translation from the old system to the new system didn't go as well as we had hoped. And so really RPA was one of those things that, we were in such a situation that, I looked across the budget that I had and said, okay, we've got to do this. There's no way, we can't put enough people in place to really do this. So it was sort of a necessity as the mother of invention, or the mother of adaptation and automation in that case. But the nice thing though, getting budget is when you can show the finance people moving to a new finance system, when you can show them the savings, they can sometimes find money in places you wouldn't always expect.
You're talking their language at that point, right?
Exactly. We saved them. So we spent about $2.5 million. We saved them almost 200,000 hours. That, again, depending on the numbers you want to use, but that's anywhere from maybe a 1,500 to about 3,000% ROI. Look, I'd even be happy to talk to, even some of the current efficiency items. I don't think there's a better investment that we could make. So I was able to show that investment. We continued to grow it. We also talked a little bit about some of the HR challenges that we had. So giving recruiters automation tools so that they could increase their throughput and, speaking with potential candidates, trying to understand a little bit about how we were going to automate some of the processes for the paperwork that we need to do. So again, when you can hit the organization's hot buttons, when you can show the finance people the savings, when you can build something out that has a true return on investment, you can find the money to continue to expand these things. It really is about driving value. Anytime you can drive value and show results, you're going to find that people will support that.
Yeah, the proverbial marriage of efficacy and efficiency always is a critical thing for government. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to hit on?
I mean, I am super excited about some of the things that we're doing on the operational side. We are truly trying to figure out how do we give better services to mariners. One of the things, just another project that we're working on this year is, I talked about Ask Hamilton. That's sort of our knowledge bot, if you will. We're actually trying to figure out how do we take the reams and reams of marine regulations, feed them in, build out something that can reliably, responsibly help to digest that information. The regulation side of the Coast Guard, everybody understands it's necessary for the marine economy, for maritime domain awareness, for shipping, and the entire spectrum of how we manage the coastal waters of the country. But it's really hard for the mariners that are focused on trying to do the work. How do we make it easier for them to consume that regulation? How do we give them something that they can interact with that can help them? So I am really excited about that one. That one it's underway. We're trying to work through it. We want to make sure that it is reliable, responsible, trustworthy before we push it out. But that's one of the really interesting things that I'm super excited for us to work on over the next year or so.
It's refreshing to hear you talk about the import of those regulations, just on the notion that, not to say that there isn't a lot of red tape, but oftentimes that stuff gets pushed into like, oh, just let it rip. Obviously, you don't have that luxury.
The government doesn't always take responsibility for the reams of regulation that we have. We leave it up to, sometimes just down to a guy on a single fishing boat to figure out, like, how does he operate? That's we're trying to think differently. We're trying to be different about that. And so where we can, we're trying to figure out how do we support those mariners.
I'm sure that's super helpful for them, and again, increasingly important in a interconnected world. All right, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for doing this.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
GovCast, along with Cybercast and HealthCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com.